Hi, I'm Stuart. Welcome to my YouTube channel, or welcome back if you watched the previous video. Thanks for viewing this video. In this video I give my top 5 nonfiction books of 2024. My last video was my top 12 fiction books of 2024. And my next video is going to be my most disappointing books of 2024. I read 18 nonfiction books in 2024. Of those, I rated 2 of those books 4.5 stars. I rated 14 of those books 4 stars, and I rated 2 of those books 3.5 stars. The 4.5 star books, the books I rated 4.5 stars, the 2 of them, those are my top 2 books. Then I selected 3 more books to round out my top 5 to have a little range in my selections. I selected one that was a memoir, one that was a history book, and one that was a mathematics book. And I also have a honorable mention book, which I just selected out of the remaining 4-star books that I hadn't included in my 3 through 5 books. My honorable mention book is The Mind of a Bee by Lars Chitka. I learned of this book from a video by Olive at a Book Olive. This book was really interesting to me because I, like many of us, think of insects as kind of automatons. Everything's by instinct. Nothing is learned. Just they do everything they're hardwired to do. But this book pointed out that I was wrong in that. Bees do learn, they make decisions, and that was really interesting to me. I learned a lot from this book. I struggled a little bit at the beginning because some of the science was stuff that I knew about way long ago in my youth, early adulthood, but I didn't know now. But as the book got a little ways in, I settled in, and I highly recommend this book for those who want to know more about bees, and they have quite rich lives, to the extent that I was a little sad for bees that besides the queen, most of the bees, they only live about 3 weeks. My number 5 book is The Biggest Number in the World, A Journey to the Edge of Mathematics by David Darling, Agnijo Banerjee, with Rick Adamson narrator. I first started listening to the audiobook of this, but I soon realized that to really fully try my best, at least, to understand what was said, I needed to get a ebook. So I did that. I continued listening to the audiobook while reading the ebook, but I found that for a book of this type, just listening to the audiobook didn't work for me. It's hard to, you can rewind an audiobook certainly, but it's harder than just looking at the ebook. Actually, the physical book would have been the best way. Well, listening to the audiobook too, but the physical book would be the best way for something like this. The title is kind of self-explanatory, but you might be thinking that, well, to get the biggest number in the world, just keep adding 1. But the real issue is that how the biggest number is, what notations you use for it, because fairly early in the search for the biggest number, as that went on, the exponential notation it didn't work anymore. So they had to keep finding ways. There was a point that they had a number that would be able to use to measure everything in the universe as it was known. So beyond that point, it became theoretical. I did try to understand best I could what was going on without getting caught up in it. I don't treat books like this as if I was in school, but I did try to understand the concepts. And as a kid, I loved math, so I don't think I read a math book since I was in college. So this was quite interesting. As I said, it was immersive. I listened to the audiobook while reading the ebook. And I forgot to mention, I learned about this one by a video at Read by Fred. My fourth book is a history book, The Children of Athena by Charles Freeman. I learned about this book in a video by Justin at Triumphal Reads. This is a book that talks about, I believe it was 20 Greek intellectuals. I don't recall the exact period, but I think it was like maybe about 500 BCE to maybe 200-300. I'm not sure if you say CE, but in the past we used to say after Christ. But I think it was approximately that period. And quite an interesting book. I have not read a book on Greek history since I was in high school, and I can't remember really how much depth they went into. Certainly they talked about Athens and Sparta, and I remember they talked about Greek and Roman mythology, but I don't remember how deeply they went. But this was quite interesting. There's philosophers, orators, doctors, and other Greek intellectuals. It would have been maybe better to have read a little bit about ancient Greek history before I read this book, because then I might have been better able to place the cities, the settings, the rulers that the intellectuals interacted with. But it was still a quite interesting book. I quite enjoyed it, and I did read a couple more books on ancient Greece, and hopefully I'll read more too as time goes on. The memoir selected is Crying in Mart by Michelle Zauner. Michelle Zauner is the leader of the popular alternative rock band Japanese Breakfast. And this book does talk some about that, the early period of the band. But the main focus of this book is her grief when her mother died and how she dealt with it. And it also talks about that her mother was a first-generation immigrant from Korea, and Michelle was the first in the family to be raised in the U.S. So, as would frequently happen, there's conflicts there because there's the traditional ways, but Michelle being raised in the U.S. her ways are gonna be the typical U.S. ways. So there was conflict between her and her mother, and a lot of clashes, and the book gives her history with her mother, and then her mother's cancer diagnosis, the death, and Michelle basically trying to memorialize her mother in her own way. Her mother's love language was cooking for people, so Michelle tried to learn to cook to kind of remember her mother and memorialize her mother. So not necessarily an easy book, but quite interesting one. My second book is The Hidden Language of Cats, How They Have Us at Hello by Sarah Brown. This book probably got bumped up a little bit because I do love cats. We don't have one, but I love cats. Cats are my favorite animal. And this is a book that I actually saw when I was at Barnes & Noble. It was displayed on one of the tables like and I guess probably pretty much every bookstore has, kind of out front. I just saw this and I couldn't resist getting it. The author is a cat lover herself, but she's also educated. She essentially has, I would refer to it as a PhD in cats. She has a doctorate, but it's in the study of cats. And she talks about how cats were, before cats kind of bonded with people, they were solitary animals. They would just get together to mate. The mother would raise the young. But when they came to live with humans, they had not only had to learn how to live with humans, they had to learn how to live with other cats. They had to learn how to live with dogs. And the author talks about how cats try to communicate, and as humans, we're not really that good at understanding how cats are trying to communicate with us, which must be kind of frustrating for the cats. But This is a really good book for any cat lover. It offers a nice look into the inner lives of cats and what they've kind of had to learn to live with us. Of course, they gain too, obviously, but what they had to kind of give up and learn how to coexist with us and our other pets. My number one book is Buzz, Sting, Bite, Why We Need Insects by Sverdrup-Thygeson. I think this is another book I learned about from a video by Ovid, a book Olive. This is another book like The Hidden Language of Bees by Lars Chick, which I talked about earlier, that gives a lot of insight into creatures that most of us, if we think about them, it's kind of like to swat them away or something when they're buzzing or kind of stomping that spider because we're scared of spiders. But this offers a great insight into a variety of insects. I think the reason why this is my top book is that the author talks about in the wrong hands would get just kind of dry and, classroom-like. But she really enlivens this book. She has a good sense of humor. She doesn't shy away from the impacts we as humans have had on insects, which, like most animals, it's generally overall a negative. But she talks about her subjects with humor, and she does a great job for making this book very accessible. I recommend this book if you like to know much more about the creatures that, as I said, you probably don't think about except the fact when they're irritating you. Mosquito biting you or some buzz in your ear or something like that. You see the benefits of the insects. To the extent that I felt sorry for some of them, because there's some insects that, or could be spiders too, I forget which, because she does talk about spiders. I know spiders aren't insects, but they would, like, say, paralyze some creature and lay their eggs in them, and the eggs would, when they hatch, would like eat from the inside this paralyzed insect. I know it sounds funny to feel sorry for insects, but that's I guess how good this book is, that I did feel sorry for some of them. So that's my list, which, although I said top 5, it's really top 6, because when you include an honorable mention. I'd be interested in knowing what your top nonfiction book or two is this year. If you'd like to let me know, please reply in the comments. If you've done your own video, give me a link and I will take a look at it. Be interested in knowing what your nonfiction books are. And as I'm recording this, it's December 31st. I wish everybody a safe New Year's Eve. Don't take any chances. And I hope that 2025 is a good one for you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, please subscribe, please hit the bell to get notified when I upload future videos.